The Deathadder V3 Hyperspeed is a very pleasant surprise coming from Razer. Nobody was really expecting a new Deathadder, much less a Deathadder Mini with pro features and a reduced price. It seems like they really nailed just about everything with this release, and a lot of people are gonna love it. I have had a couple of small issues with my copy that we'll cover in this review, but I'm excited to share my thoughts and experiences with you. The clicks on the Deathadder V3 Hyperspeed feel very similar to what we've seen from Razer with the Viper V3 Pro, as well as the Deathadder V3 Pro before it. They are using Razer's optical switches, which I think feel really good, and they are among my favorite switches on the market across any mice.
There is one very minor issue with the mouse buttons on my copy that I'll cover a little bit later in the build quality section.
Razer did change the side buttons a little bit on this compared to the Deathadder V3 Pro, in that they are a little bit smaller and they have a gap in between them. Now, if you were a person that was having some issues where you were sometimes accidentally hitting the wrong button, this is probably going to be a welcome change. It's not something that made a meaningful difference to me, but the side buttons do feel great. They're very sharp, very crisp, not mushy at all, and I think they are a great implementation. The scroll wheel on this mouse is also exceptional. Compared to the other Razer mice I have, I think this has the best tensioning, bar none. It's just tight enough that I don't accidentally over scroll and do multiple steps, but light enough that getting it moving is effortless. The one thing that I don't love about this scroll wheel currently is that pressing it in and clicking mouse 3 does seem to take a little bit more force than what I've seen on some of my other mice. And specifically in games like Overwatch, where I double click that to ping a target, I have had a little bit of issue with it, but I'm sure it's something that I'll get used to, and likely over time will loosen up a little bit as well. So the sensor in this mouse is Razer's Focus X 26K sensor. My understanding is that this is just a 3395 with a different name. To me, it is a little weird that Razer put this sensor in this mouse, because their $80 Viper V3 Hyperspeed actually has the 30K optical sensor, which does have a little bit more performance on it. This doesn't seem to really translate into too much in game. I performed just fine with this, but it is worth noting that you are not getting the latest and greatest sensor in this mouse. One issue I did have with the sensor is I did have two separate spinouts where I ended up looking directly at the ground or directly into the sky, and that was when playing on the Razer Atlas glass pad. I did change my liftoff distance to 2mm, which since doing that, I haven't had the issue again, but it is worth noting that that did happen, and it's been quite a while since I've had a spinout on a mouse. Now, along with this sensor though, Razer did include two new features in the Synapse software. Now, I don't know if they're going to bring these features to their other mice, but the two features are dynamic sensitivity and rotation control. Now, of these two, rotation control is the one that I would recommend everybody utilize if it's something that affects you. And what this does is when you're holding the mouse, if you compare how I grip an ergo mouse, it ever so slightly tilts to the left in my hand. And what that does is when I'm making horizontal movements, it causes my mouse to actually move slightly down and to the right. Now, what this rotation control does is allows me to tell the software that I want to change it 2 degrees in that direction, and it compensates for the angle of the mouse in my hand and creates a nice smooth line when I'm tracking across the screen. I think this is a great feature, and I would love to see Razer add this to all of their mice. It's something that affects me more with ergo mice versus ambidextrous mice just because of how I grip them, but I think it's a great feature. So the other feature is dynamic sensitivity. Now, this is something that I had a lot of fun playing with and is similar to other software like Raw Excel that people have been using for quite a while. It allows you to set a custom acceleration curve for your mouse, and my initial reaction to this was I thought it would mess me up, but what I found worked for me was using the jump profile. I changed my in-game sensitivity from 2.25 to 1.75 in Overwatch, and this made it so those small micro movements were just a little bit more controlled, but when I needed to make quick flicks to switch targets, I was still able to do that. I think that this is a really cool feature, but it is going to be something that I think a lot of people are going to need to spend some time with to adjust to, as well as tinker with to optimize their preferred curve. But I'm glad to see Razer innovating and adding some of these software features. I don't know any other companies that are including something like this, and I think it's really cool. If you try out the dynamic sensitivity, I'd be interested to hear about your experiences in the comment below. I've really enjoyed it, and using the jump profile has been my preferred curve, but let me know what you think. The skates on this mouse feel good, really good. I don't know what's different about them versus the skates that came on the Viper V3 Pro or even the Deathadder V3 Pro before it, but they feel exceptionally smooth. I've used these skates on cloth pads as well as glass pads, and across every stock skate I've ever used, these are the best, bar none. They do seem like they're maybe a little bit thin, so over the course of a year or a year and a half, depending on how much you use your mouse, they'll probably wear down and need to be replaced. I really hope Razer starts selling their stock feet on their website because I think a lot of people like them, and when they wear out, you don't have any other options other than going third party. So I would love to see Razer start doing that. So the coating on this mouse is the same coating that we saw on the Viper V3 Pro in black, as well as the soft touch Deathadder V3 Pro. I overall like this coating, but it's not flawless. My critiques of this coating would be that if your hands are cold or really dry, it's not particularly grippy until you warm up. On top of that, on the Viper V3 Pro, I used the black version for about 3 weeks. It did start to get like a residue on it or a grimy feeling, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but Razer did consult with a lot of pro players, and this is the coating that they liked, so I'm sure that it's something that'll work for most people. I would love to see them come out with a white version in this mouse though, with the same exact coating that they have on the Viper V3 Pro, because that would be an instant buy for me, and I'm sure a lot of people would really like that. The shape of this mouse is interesting because Razer didn't name this mouse as a Deathadder Mini, but it's definitely a Deathadder Mini. The thing that I really appreciate though is they didn't just do a percentage reduction in the size where they just took the scale and dropped it down by 15% and called it a day. They actually made some smart changes to it. So the back hump actually rises up very similarly to how the Deathadder V3 Pro does. It just doesn't go quite as high, and because the mouse isn't quite as long, it feels a little bit flatter, but it gives you the same good palm contact right in the back where you're looking for that support when you're playing with a claw grip. The width of the mouse I think is really, really good, and a lot of people are going to enjoy it because that little bit narrower width as well as that shorter length, it helped me to really dial in my aim in game, and I would say that I definitely aim better with this smaller Deathadder versus the larger one. Now, as far as grip styles with this mouse, you can probably get away with just about anything. I think it's very versatile. Razer has definitely been chasing that claw grip audience with their latest mice releases, and this is no different. I think if you're a relaxed claw grip person or an aggressive claw grip, you're gonna find a lot to like here. If you prefer palm grip, I think if you have small to medium hands, this is gonna feel really good. If you have larger hands though, then you might wanna consider looking at the Deathadder V3 Pro because that larger size is just gonna work better for you if that's how you hold the mouse. Fingertip grip is something I never recommend to people when it comes to ergo mice, but if you are someone that likes ergo mice and you want a fingertip grip, this is probably one of the better options out there because that smaller size and that lower hump is gonna allow you to have a lot of hand mobility. So looking at the build quality, my copy does have a small issue with mouse button 2 in that when I move it side to side, I can actually feel the switch move or grind a little bit underneath. This isn't something that affected my gameplay, but I did notice it while I was playing games and it was a little bit distracting. This is likely something that's a copy to copy variant, so your mileage may vary with it, but being someone that's super picky about my peripherals, it is something that I did find bothersome. I do also have a slight rattle on the inside of the mouse. It doesn't sound like anything is loose necessarily, but maybe there's just a cable in there that's making some contact with the sidewall of the mouse. Other than those two things, the build quality feels really good on this mouse. Now I know with the Deathadder V3 Pro, some people over time did experience some creaking on the sides. I can't really speak to that since this is still a relatively new mouse, but I think it feels really good, and being a larger company, Razer tends to be pretty good about honoring warranties, so if you do have issues, you can always get a replacement. So to wrap up this review, the Deathadder V3 Hyperspeed is an absolutely amazing product from Razer. They're delivering pro-level features and build quality in a mouse that costs significantly less. If you are looking for a small ergo mouse, this has got to be on the top of your list for things to try. I've absolutely loved playing games with it. I aimed really well with it. I think it's something that will definitely sit on my desk as something I play with for the foreseeable future. So if you found this review helpful and you want to watch another video from me on what mouse pads to pair with this mouse, click the link here. Otherwise, drop a like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you in the next one.